What was that music and what the hell's going on here? And what time is it?
It's Podblast time! Correction. It's the nostalgic Podblast Flashback. It's our fourth flashback in a series. We're going to cover topics that we have never done on YouTube before. These are topics that we covered on our radio show on WTZA Atlanta, 50,000 watt AM station and FM station, which is now defunct. And we didn't do these on camera. And these are some of our better shows that I did at the time with Al Hardy and Tom Williams. And this is one I did with Al Hardy, but we have a lot of new material and I'm going to show off a lot of my collectibles in my collection, like a show and tell, not show off like brag, but show off to show fellow fans of The Fugitive. And if you've not heard of The Fugitive or The InVaDeRs, this is going to be pretty informative. And these are great shows that I hope that you take a chance and watch. No pun intended. That's my name, Chance Bartels, the host of the Nostalgic Podblast, with you live until just about 1 a.m. or so. Going to go 3 hours tonight. So I want to start with The Fugitive and then we'll cover The InVaDeRs. We're going to cover these equally. So I'm going to split the show in two halves. So if you're tuning in to hear about The InVaDeRs and there's a ball game on you want to see, you might want to go watch that because I'm going to start with The Fugitive. And that was a show that starred David Janssen, of course. It was a QM production. And Quinn Martin produced a lot of great shows like The Untouchables. He was one of the media moguls that I'm going to cover in an upcoming Nostalgic Podblast. By the way, the Nostalgic Podblast airs Sundays at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time every Sunday in our Facebook group, The Nostalgic Podblast. And then we're also on fistfulofradio.com Saturdays and Sundays from 2 to 5 p.m. But this is our flashback series that I started doing Thursday nights at 10 p.m. And this is our fourth one. I went back to the first episode, which was never published on YouTube, because I wanted you to hear how it all began 2 years ago. We just had our 2-year show anniversary, or rather, I did 2 years ago. And want to also give a shout out to a couple gentlemen that I've partnered with that are my nostalgic cousins, Barry King and Alan Sanders. And Barry King and Alan host a show Saturday mornings on WBHF AM and FM in Cartersville, Georgia. And it's on TuneIn and everywhere you can find your favorite podcast. But it's a live radio show, 10 a.m. to noon Atlanta, Georgia time on WBHF. It's called BK on the Air, and it's a nostalgia show, and it's very entertaining. And I'm on there as a special guest because I'm touched in the head. It's not because I'm special at all, but let's start with The Fugitive. And I have a lot of clips. You heard some of the music by Pete Roglio, and he scored the soundtrack to The Fugitive. Going to hold up for the camera since it's on YouTube and not on Fistful of Radio. But I am going to publish this on our podcast platforms later. But it's basically a visual show today. So I want to show for you people watching in the audience, as we call the watchers and listeners, the rare soundtrack that was released in the year 2000. In the year 2000. That's a Conan O'Brien reference, who just retired. But here it is. And that's what these musical cues are from. They're from the compact disc. And this is this fetches, I guess, about $100 on eBay, and you can't even find it on Amazon anymore. And it's really good, moody music, but they recycled it throughout the whole 4 seasons of The Fugitive. And when it got to season 4, when the show went to color, it was black and white in the first 3 years. When it got to color, they started recycling some music from The Outer Limits, which had been off the air for a couple years at that point in time. The 4th and final season of The Fugitive aired in 1966 to 1967. There were 120 total episodes that were produced by Quinn Martin Productions, starring David Janssen, with Barry Morse playing the lawman, Lieutenant Philip Gerard, who was chasing him all throughout the country because he thinks that Dr. Richard Kimball murdered his wife. And most of you know the plot, but for those that don't know, the real murderer was a gentleman coined the one-armed man because he literally has one arm. And he was portrayed by an actor named Bill Raish, who actually lost his arm fighting in World War II. So it was a very dramatic hour-long show. It began September 17th, 1963. And what a lot of people don't know, I'm going to reveal some things that even the most diehard Fugitive fan doesn't know. The production order of some of the episodes versus the aired order is very important because in the pilot, the first episode, which is what most people refer to as the pilot, it didn't show the origin of the murder of Helen Kimball and Dr. Richard Kimball, seeing the one-armed man running from the vicinity of his home, as you heard in the opening credits of seasons 2 through 4. In season 1, they had a little bit of a different opening credit sequence. I'm going to play some of that. Here's some of the opening narration to the very first episode of The Fugitive. And you'll hear some of the music I played at the very top of the show.
The Fugitive.
Back this up. I want you to hear this part. This is what I really like. This is the original opening of The Fugitive. William Conrad narrates it.
The name, Dr. Richard Kimball. The destination, Death Row State Prison. The irony, Richard Kimball is innocent. Proved guilty, what Richard Kimball could not prove was that moments before discovering his murdered wife's body, he saw a one-armed man running from the vicinity of his home. Richard Kimball ponders his fate as he looks at the world for the last time and sees only darkness. But in that darkness, fate moves its huge hand. The Fugitive. A QM production. Starring David Janssen as Dr. Richard Kimball, an innocent victim of blind justice, falsely convicted for the murder of his wife. reprieved by fate when a train wreck freed him en route to the death house, freed him to hide in lonely desperation, to change his identity, to toil at many jobs, freed him to search for a one-armed man he saw leave the scene of the crime, freed him to run before the relentless pursuit of the police lieutenant obsessed with his capture. To Richard Kimball, a border is a dark tunnel whose other end might lead to the final encounter with a many-faced enemy. But for the moment, it leads to safety.
I just love William Conrad's narration, who went on to, of course, play Cannon, another Quinn Martin production in the 1970s that lasted many seasons. And then he was in Jake and the Fat Man and other productions. So I want to go over some of the history of The Fugitive, and then we'll get into some lesser known facts about The Fugitive. We got a jam packed show for you tonight. Feel free to call anytime, by the way. The number is 770 438 1050. That's 770 438 1050. I want to hear from some diehard Fugitive fans of all ages, and then we'll get to the InVaDeRs later in the show. But I want to read something about The Fugitive now. Here's the premise. It began, as I mentioned earlier, September 17th, 1963. The last episode aired August 29th, 1967, and it broke all sorts of ratings records in prime time. It beat the Beatles' appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. That was the record that was held on television until The Fugitive broke that record on August 29th, 1967 on ABC. And then that record wasn't broken until the 80s, until November 21st, 1980, when the famous Who Shot JR Resolution episode aired during the fourth season of Dallas. So it was a highly rated, great show. And you're going to hear from some of the creators of The Fugitive and the executive producers. And I have some really interesting clips to share with you tonight. But I'm going to read here a little bit about when it aired. It aired always throughout. It was consistent, fortunately. ABC consistently, it didn't shuffle it around like it does, networks do with other shows. It was consistently on ABC's Tuesday nights from 10 p.m. until 11 p.m. Dr. Richard Kimball had been accused, tried, and convicted and sentenced to die for a crime he did not commit, the murder of his wife, Helen Kimball. Kimball was being taken by Lieutenant Gerard to prison to be executed when the train in which they were riding was derailed, and the lieutenant was knocked unconscious. Kimball escaped. For the next 4 highly successful seasons, while Gerard searched Kimball searched for one arm. He had seen. Actually, this is wrong. He did not see. This book is incorrect. It says that Dr. Richard Kimball saw the Wonder Man murder his wife. He did not. He had gotten into an argument with his wife. I'm going to play the clip in a minute. And so, in the heated argument, he left to cool off. He went for a drive. And when he returned home, he saw the one-armed man running from the vicinity of his home, right in the front of his car. Right. And he almost hit him. And Kimball hit the brakes. And he saw this shot of this rat-like man, this face of the killer who did kill his wife, who he suspected, but he didn't actually see it. So I'm surprised this book has this wrong. But continuing on with this synopsis. So Kimball searched for the one-armed man, and he went all across the country. And one time he even went into Mexico, actually to evade justice. All right, so Kimball went back and forth across the country, and he took odd jobs and new identities and constantly was on the verge of being caught by that relentless cop, Lieutenant Philip Gerard, played by Barry Morse. Kimball kept looking for the real killer. Only on rare occasions could the doctor return to his former life and actually get more than just an hourly low paying job. He did find successful work as a veterinarian and things like that, where he was making good money, but it always would come to an end because Gerard and the law were always hot on the case and close to capturing him. And also, he made contacts with his sister Donna, who was married to a character named Len Taft, and he came into play in the last episode of The Fugitive, but we'll talk about that later. So Donna, she was played by Jacqueline Scott, And some of you guys that are TV nerds, old school TV nerds like me, will remember her from the pilot of The Outer Limits with Cliff Robertson called The Galaxy Being. It was about a radio station that brings an alien in from another dimension, but I digress. So Jacqueline Scott played Dr. Richard Kimball's sister. And I like that there was consistent casting in that regard because with Quinn Martin, he would hire the same actors again and again and again to play different roles. And that kind of irritated me a little bit. Like there was a great actor, Andrew Prine, who played Kimball's brother Ray in a first season episode titled Home is the Hunted, in which his father was ill. So he risked going back home to Stafford, Indiana, where he practiced and where everyone knew his face to visit his father. And Ray had a hard time where he lost jobs. He lost his girlfriend, his fiance, because of the headlines of his brother, who everyone thought was guilty of killing Helen Kimball, Dr. Richard Kimball's wife. And so, anyway, so to get back on track with my story, he did such a great job playing Kimball's brother. They brought him back in season 3, playing an entirely different character. And I thought, wow, I remember him as Ray. I'm like, that's Ray Kimball. Why didn't they just write another story with Kimball's brother? Oh well, but they didn't. So continuing on here, uh, in a move unique among series of this type, The Fugitive actually resolved the situation that had sustained suspense throughout its run. In a special two-part story, which aired the last 2 Tuesdays that the show was seen on ABC, Kimball found the one-armed man. Gerard found Kimball, and the doctor was exonerated of the crime, despite the death of the one-armed man. Spoiler alert. Yeah, the one-armed man is killed by Lieutenant Philip Gerard in the final episode. Shoots him, and you could tell it's an obvious dummy falling off this tower in an abandoned amusement park, but it's an iconic shot, and it's a great dramatic final episode, one of my favorites. Unlike shows like Lost in Space, where they never actually resolved the ongoing plot, and other sci-fi shows like Space 1999 and the Invaders that we'll talk about tonight, this actually had a satisfying resolution. Kimball and the one-armed man cornered each other atop a tower, as I just mentioned, in an abandoned amusement park. Lieutenant Gerard, in hot pursuit on the ground, realized he had been wrong about Kimball all this time and shot the one-armed man to save the doctor's life. The one-armed man plunged to his death before he could be captured. The final episode of The Fugitive, which aired August 29th, 1967, was seen by more people than any single episode of a regular series in the history of television until that time. And its 72% share of all television viewers that night were watching, and it set a regular series record, which was not exceeded, as I mentioned, until the Dallas episode in which JR's attacker was revealed, Kristen, Sue Ellen's younger sister, played by the beautiful Mary Crosby. That was a 13-year record that the final Fugitive held for top ratings. The deep voice of the narrator on The Fugitive was none other than William Conrad, as already mentioned. And reruns of The Fugitive aired weekday afternoons on ABC from April 1967 until March 1968. And I have a lot of collectibles I want to share with you guys. It was first released on home video in 1986. It was just the last 2 episodes on VHS tape, and it was a Canadian print. So the end narration, I'm not going to play it. Well, you'll hear it later in today's show, in the radio version of our remembrance of The Fugitive and the Invaders. But the narrator, William Conrad, says, Tuesday, August 29th, the day the running stopped. And yes, that's a pathetic impression of him. But on the VHS tape, he says, Tuesday, September 5th, the day the running stopped. And that's the same version that MeTV airs to this day. I wish that someone, it's not MeTV's fault, and that stands for Memorable Television. It's an over-the-air network in the United States of America. It's a really good, well-programmed network. I love their promos, but I wish that the distributor, CBS Paramount, would send them the correct print because that's an iconic episode that set ratings history, and they have it wrong. And it's kind of frustrating that it's wrong. So I want to just also mention and play a couple. Let me just play a little bit of the scene with Helen Kimball and Dr. Richard Kimball fighting right before she's killed. And Diane Brewster played Helen Kimball, and she had been seen in the first episode of Leave It to Beaver as the Beeves teacher, and she was a really pretty actor. And I want to play a little bit of this. And and let me set this up. She had just unfortunately had a stillborn child. So in this scene, she just is waking up after being put under with anesthesia, and she was under a long time. And she's asking Dr. Richard Kimball, "Do we have a son or a daughter?"
Do we have a son or a daughter?
We had a son. Helen, I love you. We can look forward to a long, full life.
I am so happy.
As a doctor, I ought to have the words. All I can say is I'm sorry. In time, we'll be able...
What's wrong?
A child was stillborn.
Dead. What else? Why did they put me under like that? What time is it? How long was I in there?
A long time.
Why? What else did they do to me?
We almost lost you, Helen.
What else?
It was the only way. We can't have children.
No children? My baby dead?
Hey. We will have children. We'll manage to.
Here's where the fight happens.
Hey, you look wonderful.
Thank you, darling. You're very gallant. And I might say the same for you.
Now that we bolstered each other's egos, what do you say we do something about our appetites?
Good. Where to tonight?
This little seafood house Carter was telling you about. It's good food, huh?
That was the doctor's think screwed up her pregnancy.
When did you see Ross Carter?
Helen, let's not spoil tonight, huh?
The great Ross Carter of the Clinic for Planned Parenthood.
Look, we merely discussed the possibility.
Forget it, Richard. For the last time, I won't live a lie.
I'm not so far away. You have to scream it.
I'll scream all I want.
Helen, why do you keep thinking of adoption as a lie?
Because it is. I wouldn't be its mother.
Every year, thousands of people.
I don't care if 1 million people lie to themselves. If I can't have a child, I won't have one.
Ooh, what a bitch.
Well, your tragedy. Look, he was my son, too. Doesn't that mean anything to you?
It means I'm going to have another drink. We have lots of glasses, Richard.
She dropped the glass. That wasn't like he didn't lash out at her or anything. So obviously he exits the room, storms out calmly to take a drive. As the dramatic music plays by Pete Roglio. You get the picture. So he returns home and he sees the one-armed man. It's more of a visual clip. And, I don't know how people get away with this. Someone has posted this on YouTube. So I'd recommend purchasing the DVD set from CBS Paramount. And I think it's streaming on Apple TV. I'm pretty sure that's the case because the InVaDeRs is. So I should have checked that before the show, but it should be streaming on Apple TV. But it's definitely available on DVD by CBS Paramount. And I'll hold up for the camera. I have the deluxe set. Oh, let me quickly tell you this. When they released this on DVD, originally, they did release season 1 with all the original background music intact, but when they got around to season 2, fans were outraged when there was terrible music replacement. And the reason was they couldn't identify who scored some of this incidental music. It was taken from other shows like The Twilight Zone, and there was some nondescript music that CBS Paramount or whoever worked for them at the time couldn't identify. So instead of identifying the artist and doing the right thing and satisfying the fans, they put this nondescript music, which was heavily synthesized. It just sounded like someone playing a harpsichord. It was just really bad. But here's what the DVD set looked like. Anyone watching on YouTube? This is the original DVD set, and they were released in 2 installments, series 1. There was 30 episodes per season, 30 episodes of season 1, and there's an extended version of the pilot that I highly recommend, which was released in a deluxe set. Now, fans were so outraged about how the music was botched in season 2 and 3 and 4 that CBS Paramount issued a certificate, and they let people exchange through the mail their DVD sets, and they sent replacement discs. Now, when they had these box sets, they restored just about all of the music. So if you really want to buy these, you can get a deal on the box set. I'll hold it up for the camera, and that's got all the original music. It may not mean anything to you, but it really does change the meaning and the intent of the show when you hear it with the original music versus this reorchestrated. Like, basically, it's like garage band incidental music. And I remember when I got this first DVD set in 2006, in the back of the case, it did say that music was altered. And I thought, what the hell? In season 1, it wasn't changed at all. And I thought, that's strange. And I soon realized that was just a form letter or form document they put on the back of all the DVDs, because they knew darn well when they released season 1 that season 2 was going to start with the music replacement. There were a lot of great guest stars in The Fugitive, like Angie Dickinson. Oh man, there was a great couple episodes with Robert Duvall. A lot of future Oscar winners, great directors worked on The Fugitive. Got to hold up for the camera the deluxe set. This is all available, of course, where everything is available, on Amazon. Give them a free plug. I'm giving them a free plug right now, but look at this set. It's just gorgeous. And it also comes with the wanted poster. Interstate Flight wanted Dr. Richard Kimball. Show you the front and back. It's an awesome, awesome set. I have another deluxe set that's open, so I've kept this one sealed. I'm just a geek like that. I don't think it'll be worth anything, but I just think it looks too pretty. It's too purty to open up. But get that if you can. It's always on sale on Amazon.com. Much better than streaming, in my opinion, if you still have a DVD player. And why wouldn't you? I read that DVD sales are up because of the pandemic of last year. So what I did, I have some exclusive audio for you tonight that I've never revealed anywhere. I have a lot of 16 millimeter film footage, including the last episodes with the original commercials from the original air date in August 1967. But I want to play a little bit of audio that a great gentleman who is a great broadcaster, Larry Wax, converted for me from my 16 millimeter film to digital. He converted it for me as a favor. And this is an episode, another one with the original commercials called This'll Kill You, which guest starred Nita Talbot and Mickey Rooney, among others. There was another character actor, Robert Pine, in it. And he played a goon, like a hitman for the mob. He played a mobster. It's a really, really good episode where Mickey Rooney plays a guy who's in love with a character played by Nita Talbot. And a lot of people know her from Hogan's Heroes and other shows. She was a very sultry actor. She was kind of like a Lauren Bacall type. But I want to play a couple of the commercials, like an ad for Viceroy cigarettes. It had the funniest jingle, and this is actually on my personal YouTube channel, not the one you're watching now, the Nostalgic Podblast, but I have another YouTube channel called Chance Acting Demo. That's all one word, Chance Acting Demo. And that's where this comes from. So I'm going to play a little bit of that, and that's from season 3. It aired January 18th, 1966. And this is a little bit of the opening. This is exclusive audio. Well, I put it on YouTube last night. So as of it's been exclusive for the last 12 hours or so. But let me find it right fast quick. I think you'll dig this. Here's the opening of This'll Kill Ya. A little bit of the opening with the original commercials. And this also, like I said, it's on YouTube if you want to see it. But check this out. Having some problems with my audio. God dang it. Bear with me, folks. It'll be worth it. Wait for it. Wait for it. God damn it. Lord in heaven, forgive me. Sorry, Lord.
New Pedum Flea and Tick Spray. Kills pests, leaves coats shining. New Pedum Liquid Shampoo.
Back it up. There we go.
The Fugitive,
And this is the season 2 opener.
a QM production. Starring David Janssen as Dr. Richard Kimball, an innocent victim of blind justice, falsely convicted for the murder of his wife. Reprieved by fate when a train wreck freed him en route to the death house. Freed him to hide in lonely desperation, to change his identity, to toil at many jobs. Freed him to search for a one-armed man he saw leave the scene of the crime.
You can hear a splice right there.
Freed him to run before the relentless pursuit of the police lieutenant obsessed with his capture. The guest stars in tonight's story: Mickey Rooney, Nita Talbot. Tonight's episode, This'll Kill You, brought to you by
Viceroy. Viceroy's got the taste that's right. Right any time of the day. And by CN America's sun specialist. Makers of CN suntan lotion and CN fast tanning foam. Pedum Laboratories presents 4 new grooming products for pets. New Pedum Flea and Tick Powder in a handy puffer pack. New Pedum Flea and Tick Spray. Kills pests, leaves coats shining. New Pedum Liquid Shampoo in an unbreakable bottle. And the new Pedum Shampoo Kit with a detergent bar, holder, and lather brush massager. All now at your drugstore.
Who is the hippest, the coolest chick, oh man? She's the one with the deep, dark CN tan.
CN's unique sun filter lets in the dark tanning rays, stops most burning rays cold. CN's lotion or new fast tanning foam.
Highest working burn, stopping dog tanning CN
From America's sun specialist.
I love that jingle. I love that jingle. And you're going to hear one now for Viceroy cigarettes. I almost hate to share this, but because it's so rare, I've kept it rare all these years, but I'm in a giving mood, so I'm going to play some of this. Cigarette ads were banned in the year 1969.
Come on, Nick. Let's get some work done.
They're riding and roping, working the range. Yippee-I, yippee-oh-I.
Then the Viceroy smoke for the taste that's right. Right any time of the day. This is the good taste you always get when you smoke the Viceroy way. 'Cause the Viceroy smoke's got the taste that's right. Right any time of the day.
Viceroy is the filter cigarette blended with natural flavor fresheners to enrich and improve true tobacco taste. That's why Viceroy tastes rich, good, rewarding anytime you light up.
800 head home in the corral. Now is the time when you say,
Give me a Viceroy smoke, it's got the taste that's right. Right any time of the day.
I love that jingle. So I'm going to move on with some of our radio portion of tonight's show. I want to play a little promo for you. This is a promo from WTZA in which we aired. Here we go. Check out this promo.
Are you old enough to remember this?
The Fugitive. A QM production.
If you remember that, then tune in Saturday at 2 p.m. to the nostalgic pop culture Podblast. This week, the classic Quinn Martin TV dramas are explored. Join us for interviews with the stars, classic clips, and lots of memories, plus your phone calls. That's the nostalgic pop culture Podblast. Saturdays at 2 p.m. right here on Talk of Atlanta, WTZA 102.1 FM, 1010 AM, and talkofatlanta.com.
Don't want to repeat anything, so I'm going to go ahead and play some of our pre-recorded radio portion, which was live at the time, that honors the Fugitive and the InVaDeRs. And then when we come back, I'm going to take any calls, 770-438-1050. And we're going to also talk about the InVaDeRs in great detail and have a lot of cool, rare stuff. But we have a call coming in. Hang on. Let's see who's calling. Nostalgic Podblast. Who is this?
Hey, it's VK calling. What's up?
How are you doing, man?
Pretty good. I hate calling with a technical thing, but yeah, whatever you play off the board is still way too hot, and I don't know why. If you're turning it down, it's not going down. It's still it's way too loud compared to your vocals on the microphone.
Oh, well, thanks for letting me know. I'll work on that as I air the pre-recorded portion that was live at the time a year ago.
Cool, man. So I'll let you know. I am listening, and I will check in with you later.
Sounds great. Drive safely.
All right, buddy. Thanks. Bye.
Barry King, BK on the air. So let's start our retrospective. This has a lot of clips, a lot of excitement. This is with the stars of the show and the creators of the show that I put together. This aired a year ago on WTZA. And let's go back in time and listen to it, and I'll be back with you live and throughout. I'm going to hold up some props as this plays. So
147199. That's 800.
You're going to hear some radio spots, but here's
7199.
This is WTZA, Decatur, Atlanta. Hey, Chance, what time is it?
It's Podblast time.
And time.
Hello, Atlanta. Hello, Atlanta.
We're here.
Alan Chance and Tom Williams. I'm Chance Bartels. Al Hardy's running the board, and Tom Williams, who is our other co-host, is here with us in studio. It is Saturday, February 29th, and we are live. Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay.
Al, we have a big show today,
great.
Do we not?
That's right.
A great show about some classic television and television moguls. And one of the moguls we're talking about is Quinn Martin, a QM production.
He produced so many shows back in the 60s. I guess it up to the 70s, right, Tom?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He had now was he the one that had the big chisel at the end?
No. That's Jack Webb.
Yeah.
No. But the big chisel thing at the end was
that was Mark 7 production. That was Jack Webb.
That's Jack Webb's production company.
But it was more memorable.
No, it was just a QM production. That was it. Quinn Martin.
No, Quinn Martin, he did The Streets of San Francisco, The Fugitive, The InVaDeRs. The list goes on and on and on. But we're going to focus primarily on The Fugitive. Did you know that The Fugitive's final episode, which aired on August 29th, 1967, was the highest rated show in television history until November 21st, 1980, when the famous Who Shot JR episode aired on CBS on Friday night.
Well, what about MASH? What's it?
MASH, the finale of MASH beat the Who Shot JR record. But The Fugitive held the highest ratings record for years from August 29th, 67 until November 21st, 1980. Wow, and we're going to play a clip of that finale. Very dramatic stuff. But,
I didn't know that.
Here at WTZA, Talk of Atlanta, I'm pretty much just in the sales department. I'm just a sales weasel. I do radio as a hobby because I love listening to the Kimmer and Mike Brooks and Jim Gossett and Kara and Shannon Burke and the whole crew. And I used to listen to these guys, especially the Kimmer show when he was on GST driving around. So, as Kimmer says, everybody wants to get into the act. And he says, we are broadcast professionals. Please Don't try this at home. But we are trying it because, look, I'm no delusions. I am not Ryan Seacrest, and I never will be. We're just doing this for fun as a hobby. And you know what? We are making history. This is the first pop culture show in Atlanta radio history ever.
It's the only one that I know of. And we started this when we got unemployed, and we started doing this podcast back last June. Yeah.
And we air a pre-recorded segment, which actually is a podcast. So if you're old school and you've never heard a podcast, well, you're about to. And I think it's a first, at least in Atlanta, that you've heard a podcast on terrestrial radio. And, we try to keep it clean, and this is a family show. But the cool thing is we're going to start talking about collectibles. We have experts that we've invited to the show. Now, today's show we recorded way back on September 15th, 2019. Yeah, it was September 15th because you were Tom Williams here. He's the director at the Weather Channel here in Atlanta, which, of course, is a international network. Yes. And he was working Music Midtown. He does all sorts of gigs, directing all sorts of venues, events. He goes to Las Vegas. He goes all over the place, earning a bunch of money. He's a workaholic.
Don't say that too much.
He's the one with the money. When we need something, we have Tom go out and get it for us.
Now, another thing I want to mention, one of the shows, all right, so the first half of the show will be about the Fugitive. The second half is about the InVaDeRs. And the cool thing about the InVaDeRs is tonight at midnight, the very first episode of the InVaDeRs, titled Beachhead, will air on Me TV.
And Chance has his InVaDeRs t-shirt on.
Yeah.
That's right.
And what's this thing you got on your head? I wish we could Facebook Live.
I'm a germaphobe. I have my own headphones that are coming in the mail, Sony headphones, but I'm using studio headphones. And so I sterilize these headphones before we go on the air. And I'm wearing like a skull cap. I'm wearing a skull cap to prevent germs.
Well, I've got one in my car. It's just like it, except it's gray and it says the Weather Channel. I should go get that out and wear that. That way we would be twinsies or something like that.
I don't wear those things.
We're going to invite your calls after the pre-recorded segment at 678-996-1776. And the question of the day is, do you believe in alien beings from outer space? If so, we want to hear from you. Now we'll probably take calls.
Do you believe in aliens? Do you believe
Absolutely. I'm not so hubris to think that Earthlings and human beings are the most intelligent and only forms of life in the universe, the vast universe of space. Yeah, I believe in aliens.
Can I tell you? How do
you think that? What about the pyramids in Egypt? They're so symmetrical. I mean, I think they
can
had
I tell you a
Easter
story?
Island?
Can I tell you a story real quick that's true about a friend of mine?
It's your show. Go ahead.
He was riding down. He lived in Midtown. He was riding down Ponce de Leon Avenue. This was back when he was a kid. And he said he was riding his bike. It was late in the day. And this is, he said he swears this is true. It happened. He was riding his bike, and all of a sudden, this little red light started following him and was just looking at him.
It's one of those laser pointers. Come on.
No. This was before lasers. This was
somebody
no. He said it went all around it, but it was no laser point. He said it followed him all the way home. I don't know. I mean,
Chance it was a laser pointer.
There wasn't a laser pointer. Because I said
I'm a believer. I
said the same thing. He says, no, it wasn't a laser pointer.
Now, guys, even if you don't like science fiction, this show really was like a mob show. I'm talking about the InVaDeRs here. It was really cool. The aliens were ruthless killers, and when they died, they would burn up and disappear. And oxygen was lethal to them. So the question I asked of the InVaDeRs production team and writers is, why did you write a show about aliens that want to take over the Earth when oxygen's lethal to them? They had to regenerate.
But the InVaDeRs didn't last very long on television.
It did not.
Network
Sabotage had 43 total episodes, but they're all really good. And you had some good guest stars too, like Gene Hackman. Great guest stars, great stories.
And I'll have to tell, Chance one Christmas gave me the box set of the InVaDeRs, and we watch them all the time, and they're really good.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They've been restored, but Me TV is going to air the very first episode tonight. Now, Me TV is a free over-the-air network. It's a digital network. There's 2 affiliates here in Atlanta, WGTA in Toccoa and WUPA 69.4 in Atlanta. That's a CW subchannel. But it's also on channel 17 on Comcast. It's channel 186.
Which is ironic because of channel 17 here,
That's right. 17, Ted Turner's 17. We do a show about Ted Turner, and we have a special guest, Bill Tush, on. But channel 17 was how Me TV really got started. And WGN. Ted Turner was a revolutionary.
Well, he was the first
pioneer.
one to put these old shows on satellite, because it was on satellite.
Absolutely.
Well, that's because they were cheap back then, because he bought them as a package deal. And originally he was not a quote unquote superstation like WGN. He slowly snuck them all in there. And then all of a sudden, bam, he wants to, he's first in advertising and billboards.
That's right.
Billboards. That's what his father started it as. So.
And we like Bill Tush a lot around here. He was the face of TBS 17, WTCG and WTBS. But getting back to Meet TV. So I mentioned it's on channel 17. On Comcast, it's 186. On Spectrum, it's channel 116. On True Vista. And on, Dish and DirecTV and ATT Universe, it's channel 32. Midnight Tonight, the InVaDeRs pilot. It's really good. Trust me, you'll get sucked into this show.
But the bad thing about Dish, and I will say this, I've got Dish, and it does have Meet TV, but it's like they broadcast it in, let me back up. I just came back from LA.
Right.
And there was Spectrum cable in the rooms in one of the hotels we stayed.
They didn't have Comcast out there?
No. So there was Meet TV. There was Perry Mason. There was a Perry Mason episode, and it almost filled the screen. It wasn't high def, but it was great. And it looked beautiful. It looked beautiful. But you come to my house and look at it on Dish, it's squeezed back like it's 480. And it doesn't fill the screen. It's a small. It's not a small.
But why is that?
I don't know. I got to find out. But that's weird that Dish would rebroadcast it in a lower width and a lower resolution than the cable system.
When I worked at 17, we ran Perry Mason there on 16 millimeter film.
Sure you did.
Yeah. So.
Hey, I got to give a birthday shout out. Now, this is going back to our Cumulus days. Remember Megan, the receptionist? I don't know if she's still there, but this is interesting. She's a leap year baby. So February 29th, which only comes, every 4 years or so,
right,
is her birthday. So I doubt she's listening because I don't know. But I just wish Megan a happy birthday. Because that's pretty cool. Wouldn't it be weird to be born on the 29th of February, though? I mean, because what do you do? Celebrate on the 28th?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, in this, I just think it's pretty cool that there's 29 days. Hey, we have an extra day of Black History Month. That's good.
All right, so this is Podblast number 4
that we did on September 15th, 2019.
Right.
We should get it rolling. We're going to take your calls after. Now, this is get yourself a drink. The cool thing is this is commercial free. No commercials during the pre-recorded segment. It's going to run about an hour and 37 minutes. Then we'll be back live to take your calls at 678-996-1776.
I want to thank Tom for bringing us lunch today, too. He brought
Absolutely.
Pizza. He brought pizza.
That's right. Marco's, I'm not going to say that. Get
Marco's Pizza.
Oh, Marco, we like Marco's Pizza. It's all good.
We get a discount.
Roll it.
Now let's go back in time.
And we'll be back live at about 3:40.
We are rolling. Hello, Chance.
How's it going, Al?
I'm hanging in there. How you doing today, bud?
I'm fine. Welcome, everybody, to our 4th podcast.
We finally got together again. It's been a while.
It's been a little minute. Our friend Tom Williams, our 3rd host, had to work today. He's a busy guy. As we mentioned last time in our Honeymooners podcast, he's a director at the Weather Channel. And currently there have been a lot of storms, Hurricane Dorian. So he's been working like crazy, but we hope to have him back next week. Yeah. And we promised we'd talk about the Munsters this time, but we're going to wait when it gets a little closer to Halloween.
One of my favorite times of the year.
Right. And of course, you may be listening to this at holiday season, after Halloween, but we want to keep it real. We're going to drop the Munsters show during Halloween season in October. So
we'll do a couple of shows on Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because Halloween, like I said, is one of my favorite times of year.
Oh! That hurt your ear?
No.
Right. Now, my ear. This is our 4th, as I mentioned, and along the way, I've made a couple mistakes. I just want to clarify a couple things before we get into our topic of this podcast.
Don't use any foul words.
No. One of the listeners said they didn't appreciate the language I used, and we're going to keep this as a family podcast, so I'm going to mind my P's and Q's. But a few things I said in the game show podcast, which was the 2nd podcast we did, I want to correct really quickly before we get rolling. One, if you happen to hear the game show podcast, I mentioned that Family Feud was recorded in Atlanta at the Georgia World Congress Center. And of course, that's not true. It was the Atlanta Civic Center, as most people know.
Well, that's minor, really.
I know. It's just, I'm nitpicking, but
like,
I don't want to put any incorrect information out there. And Al, in that same game show podcast, you had mentioned Hugh Downs as the original host of Concentration. And I said in that podcast, well, didn't he do a news show like 60 Minutes? And you said, no, 60 Minutes with CBS. And you're right, of course. He was on ABC. The show I was trying to think of was 2020.
Yes.
that
Now,
Hugh
Hugh
Downs
Downs
hosted.
was a big part of that show when it first came on.
And just a couple more corrections here. I said in the game show podcast that Gene Rayburn would kiss the new Kid on the Block contestant each week. And of course, I meant the new celebrity panelist. Again, nitpicking, but
yeah, you are, but that's okay.
And the last thing was I said The Price is Right would air at noon, and everybody knows it always has aired at 11 a.m. coast to coast. So anyway, and then last week in the Honeymooners podcast, I omitted Joyce Randolph. And you know what?
We should have
still
talked about
alive.
her. She
She's
was
still
really good.
really good, and she's still alive. And there were a lot of funny bits with Jackie and her because her character supposedly was a burlesque star. And so Jackie, as Ralph Crandon would joke with her and say, hey, if the shoe fits, take it off. And she go, hey, wait a minute. I was in burlesque. I wasn't a stripper. Anyway, and then one other thing, getting back to the Honeymooners podcast, the last one we did, podcast 3, was I wanted to play a clip, and I forgot, of Frankie Avalon making his debut, and it was on live television. He was 12 years old in the Christmas 1952 Jackie Gleason Show live sketch, and he played Blue Skies on his trumpet. So those are pretty much all the corrections. I'm sure I'll make many more mistakes.
You know what his biggest hit song was?
I do not.
Frankie Avalon.
Was it Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea?
No, he did do that.
Right, he did. And that's actually a really good theme song
called Venus.
Oh, of course, Venus.
1959. Yeah.
That's a great song. Was that remade a lot over the years?
No, I don't think it's been remade. He was really good. That was a great song.
It was. Now, what we're going to talk about today, I love big time television moguls of the day. Okay. You had several executive producers, many of which you'll know about, like Aaron Spelling. There was Glenn A. Larson, who had a lot of shows in the late 70s and 80s. He was sort of like a mini Aaron Spelling. And then going back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, you had Quinn Martin, a QM production.
QM production, yeah.
And he had quite a few great shows that are very memorable, like The Untouchables.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, Al, you have every episode of The Untouchables in your
do.
collection. He did The FBI with Ephraim Zimbalist.
In color.
Am I pronouncing his last name correctly?
Ephraim Zimbalist Jr.
There you go.
Yeah.
And 12 O'Clock High, big, great
One of
World
my
War
favorite
II.
shows.
Right. That started in 1964 based on the movie. And you had Robert Lansing as the star of that program. In the
He only
first year.
lasted a couple of years.
No, the first year. Yeah.
First year, yeah.
He was apparently difficult to work with. So they brought in Paul Burke.
He
to
did a
replace
great
him.
job too, Paul Burke.
He did. But Robert Lansing is just a phenomenal actor. And I'm sure he's deceased, but his work lives on through celluloid and film.
You know where he got
and video.
started?
I don't.
When he was on a soap opera on CBS, The Edge of Night.
Well, I'll be doggone.
That was his. The first time I ever saw him was on The Edge of Night. It used to be, when it came on CBS, was a 15-minute show. Then it expanded to 30 minutes. It was one of the first soap operas on television.
Edge of Night.
The Edge of Night. And the second biggest soap opera, we'll talk about soap operas, was As the World Turns. But anyway,
Wow.
I digress.
How does Days of Our Lives factor into this in terms of longevity?
That was a good one too.
That's been around since, I think, 65.
It's still on.
It's still on.
NBC. Yeah.
But we're going to focus on two shows in this podcast that I think are Quinn Martin's best, although The Untouchables is rock solid entertainment. And those shows are The Fugitive and The InVaDeRs. But we're going to start with The Fugitive, which debuted in 1963. And we've got a lot of great audio, interviews, music. It's just a wonderful show. And of course, they made a movie with Harrison Ford released in 1993.
I remember where I was the final episode that aired on ABC.
And that was on August 29th, 1967. We'll get to that. That actually smashed.
Everybody stayed home to watch that.
Right. It smashed all sorts of ratings records.
I remember sitting in our family room when I was, living at home then, and we all sat around the TV and watched the end of The Fugitive.
That was before my time. I discovered The Fugitive in syndication. A&E used to air reruns of The Fugitive in 1990 through 1993. And that's how I discovered the show. And I just loved it. And locally, we're in Atlanta, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
This won't mean anything to most people listening, but there's a NBC affiliate WXIA, and they aired The Fugitive also in the early 90s. And
yeah, they were ABC before
in the 70s, yes.
In the 70s, before they switched to NBC
with WSB.
Yeah, WSB dropped NBC, went to ABC, and then Channel 11, which was ABC, went to NBC.
Right.
They didn't have a choice.
Oh, I could say something that's probably pretty boring.
It was Cox who screwed Channel 11.
Well, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to mention that also WAGA TV in Atlanta used to be a CBS affiliate, and they became a Fox affiliate. And now WGCL is the CBS affiliate in Atlanta.
Right.
Okay, now that everyone's tuning out now, we're going to have some excitement and some fun talking about The Fugitive. All the great guest stars, so many careers were launched as a guest actor on The Fugitive. It was quite a big deal to be on this program because it was a big hit. 120 episodes, 4 seasons. The first 3 were in black and white. The 4th season was in color. And I love the star David Janssen. Some people thought his acting was bad. I disagree. I think he was very, very subtle.
He was a good TV actor, but he didn't translate to the movies very well.
No, he did several movies. I think probably the best known one was The Green Berets with the Duke.
Right. He was in a movie called The Warning Shot.
Warning Shot in 1967, which he would have filmed when the production was winding down on The Fugitive. But the narrator of The Fugitive is someone that became a pretty well-known actor back in the day.
I liked his voice too.
Very deep. It's William Conrad, who went on to play Cannon, another Quinn Martin production, started in 1971.
William Conrad also narrated Bullwinkle.
That's right.
He was on the Bullwinkle show.
And he had a good girth to him. He was a big guy. He even started in a show in the 80s called Jake and the Fat Man, and William Conrad, of course, played the Fat Man.
Well, I liked him. I thought he was a good actor. I just liked him.
Yeah, and he did some narrating work for Glenn A. Larson, Buck Rogers, The Fall Guy. Anyway, I digress. But The Fugitive concept was based on Les Miserables, Man on the Run from the Law, Innocent. And it was based on the Sam Shepard case, which is a real case in the news before my time, but I read all about it. I've read books on The Fugitive, and I've done a lot of research. And it was a well-known case about a doctor accused of killing his wife, and he claimed he was innocent. Now, there was no one-armed man. That was TV drama added to make it more watchable and dramatic each week, as our hero, the innocent Dr. Richard Kimball, searches for the man that he saw kill his wife. And actually not the pilot. The pilot of The Fugitive is called Fear in a Desert City, and it doesn't cover any flashbacks or any action leading up to Kimball's escape from the train, where he's handcuffed to Lieutenant Philip Gerard, the antagonist in the show, who's a lawman, who only stands by the law. He doesn't write the laws. He enforces the laws. He was deadly serious, played by a Canadian-born actor who has a British accent. His name's Barry Morse as Lieutenant Philip Gerard. And he was just excellent as the pursuer, relentless, cold, and effective. He's always tracking
during
him
the
down.
show, at the end of every show, he almost got caught. That was just, he comes so close to getting caught each episode.
There were many, and the one-armed man, the man that really killed Helen Kimball in the story.
And I'm talking about Richard Kimball was found out, they almost caught him.
Yeah, I got you.
Not the real guy that killed his wife.
Right, but you made me think of something. I was just going to mention the one-armed man was played by Bill Raish, and he actually did have one arm. He lost his arm in World War II putting out a fire. So he was a veteran, and he got into acting, and originally they would use him in one episode, maybe 2 per season. And then when the show went to color, there were several close calls where Kimball almost caught the one-armed man, which eventually he, of course, did in the very final episode, which we'll talk about later.
The name, Dr. Richard Kimball. The destination, Death Row State Prison. The irony, Richard Kimball is innocent. Proved guilty, what Richard Kimball could not prove was that moments before discovering his murdered wife's body, he saw a one-armed man running from the vicinity of his home. Richard Kimball ponders his fate as he looks at the world for the last time and sees only darkness. But in that darkness, fate moves its huge hand. The Fugitive. A QM production. Starring David Janssen as Dr. Richard Kimball, innocent victim of blind justice, falsely convicted for the murder of his wife. Reprieved by fate when a train wreck freed him en route to the death house. Freed him to hide in lonely desperation, to change his identity, to toil at many jobs. Freed him to search for a one-armed man he saw leave the scene of the crime. Freed him to run before the relentless pursuit of the police lieutenant obsessed with his capture. To Richard Kimball, a border is a dark tunnel whose other end might lead to the final encounter with a many-faced enemy. But for the moment, it leads to safety.
You know, they don't make TV shows like that anymore.
No, they don't. I just wanted to get you guys familiar with the opening and how the music sounded. And that was William Conrad's voice, of course, that we talked about. Now, The Fugitive debuted on September 17th, 1963.
Where were you in 1963?
In the cosmos. I wasn't around yet, but it was on ABC TV. That was a pretty big year. They had a big ad campaign about the new ABC, and they had launched The Outer Limits that same season, that same year.
You know, ABC, I remember growing up watching it, and they had the best shows. I mean, I you know, NBC was there and CBS, but it seems to me like ABC had the shows that most everybody wanted to see.
ABC stands for the American Broadcasting Company,
which is now owned by Disney. But we watched The Fugitive every week.
You're lucky.
We never missed it.
I watched it in reruns and on DVD, but it ran 4 seasons, and it would have kept going, but David Janssen just got tired of it. He wanted to break into film.
As most TV people do, they want to break out and make a motion picture and be a big movie star.
The writers and the scripts were so good on that show. The writers were getting a little, I won't say burned out, but
yeah, but they had so many good guest
much.
Stars too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that there were some really good people on those shows.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But what's interesting about the pilot, originally it was going to be set in terms of Kimball's hometown and where the murder took place in Madison, Wisconsin. Why that's significant is if anyone goes back and buys the DVDs or watches The Fugitive, it was running on MeTV, which is a great network that plays classic television. It's all over the country. Check for your local affiliate wherever you are.
I don't think they're running The Fugitive now, though.
They're not. They were running it weekly. It would be kind of late on Sunday night. Like
11 o'clock. 11 or 12.
No, it was like midnight.
Yeah, about midnight.
It would be pretty late. But so it was set originally in Madison, Wisconsin. And why that's significant is if you look at the pilot, Fear in a Desert City, you'll see a bus. And Kimball's traveling on that bus, and it has the words Madison, Wisconsin on it, as it does in an episode called Home is the Hunted from season 1, which was significant because it introduced Richard Kimball's sister, Donna, and his nephew, played by Bill Mumy. He went on to play a couple of years later Will Robinson in Lost in Space, and he'd been in everything in those days. Twilight Zone. He was the kid with that would wish people into the cornfield.
He was a great
and
kid actor. I really liked him.
Yeah, he is, and he's very active in the music realm these days. But he's a member of the Academy of Arts and Sciences. He votes on movies that win Oscars. Kind of cool. But Here in a Desert City, the pilot, Brian Keith was in it, and you may not know who that is, but he played the dad a few seasons later on Family Affair. And he was in Hardcastle and McCormick, and sadly took his own life when he got sick.
Yeah, but he actually transferred to movies. He made a lot of good movies. He wasn't a big movie star, but he was a great character. He was in a lot of movies.
He had that great grassly voice. You know, he had a really good Uncle Bill. That's who he played.
But Family Affair made him the star,
and that lasted 5 seasons on CBS.
CBS.
Yeah, but he's a
real jerk in the pilot. I was going to say the B word, but he is just so ruthless. He plays a jealous, obsessive guy, thinks his ex-wife is basically sleeping with everybody in the town, including Richard Kimball, who's working as a bartender in this club in Tucson, Arizona. And his ex-wife is playing the piano, for entertainment in that club. So Brian Key's character comes in, and he's just such a jerk, and he winds up beating his ex-wife in the parking lot. And of course, Kimball breaks it up and punches Brian Key's character square in the jaw, knocking him to the ground. And it's an intriguing story, but it doesn't cover the origin, the escape, the trial, all that. That actually was in an episode called The Girl from Little Egypt, and that was the third one they filmed. Even today, networks will air shows out of episodic order based on when the production is gone through post-production, meaning music, special effects, and things. So for various reasons, they air out of order. Well, The Origin aired in 1963 on Christmas Eve, and it was the 15th episode of season 1 that aired. So the audience had to wait several weeks and months to know the origin of Richard Kimball escaping, the trial, the murder, everything. And it's a great episode. The Girl from Little Egypt. Ed Nelson's
Have we
in
watched
it.
that one?
We have. Ed
Okay.
Nelson's in it. Remember Ed Nelson?
Yeah.
I met him in person. He's a great guy. Speaking of meeting people in person, I met Barry Morse, who played Lieutenant Philip Gerard, Labor Day weekend in the year 2000.
What?
That's a Conan O'Brien. I didn't do it right, but there was a skit on Conan O'Brien called In the Year 2000. Anyway, it was in the year 2000, Labor Day in Manhattan. There was a Space 1999 convention. Yes, I'm a nerd. I went there to meet Martin Landau and Catherine Schell.
Didn't
and
care
Barry
for that
Morse.
show too much.
I know. Barry Morse, you're not alone. Barry Morse was there. And so I asked him a lot about The Fugitive, and he signed a lot of autographs for free for me. I've got pictures with him. Sadly, he's passed away, but he was just a wonderful guy. And he was so in love with his wife, Sydney. And he was a Canadian-based actor, as I mentioned before, and he met her doing summer stock. And she passed away after I met him, but soon after she passed, he passed. That's just typically how it goes in many
I
cases.
was saying here says Barry Morse.
Oh, yeah. Barry. Hey, we got a call. The Nostalgic Podblast. Is this Danny?
It is. Hello, Nostalgic Podblast.
What's happening, man? We're talking about the InVaDeRs and the Fugitive tonight. Do you have any memories of either of those shows?
The show's not so much, but in regards to the Fugitive movie, I read something like really interesting. It was sort of like an online article about famous lines that were ad-libbed at the time, and in the Harrison Ford, The Fugitive, where Tommy Lee Jones hunts him down, they're whatever, the drainage waterfall ditch or whatever, and Harrison Ford's like, I did not kill my wife, and he's like, I don't care. Apparently that was totally ad-libbed by Tommy Lee Jones. That was not in the script. The script line was completely different.
Wow, it's just like how Harrison Ford ad-libbed in Empire Strikes Back. I know, right where he's frozen.
Right, exactly.
I love you. I know.
Right, exactly. And so, like I said, the gist of this article was iconic lines that were never intended. Just like the Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs, where it's I ate his liver with fava beans and nice Chianti, and did that sound that apparently that was a sound he used to make as a kid to freak out his classmates or his sister or something. I don't remember the particulars, but that was completely ad lib. But yeah, man, I thought it was really cool. Once again, I don't remember what the Tommy Lee Jones character's line specifically was, but they're probably you've been an on-site actor, so I'm sure there was some discomfort in the situation, and it's wet, and it's uncomfortable and cold, and Harrison Ford's I did not kill my wife, and he's just I don't care.
Right.
It's just natural and translated
Absolutely. And of course, that film was a major success based on the TV show created by Roy Huggins. And it was released on August 6th, 1993. And the budget was 44 million and it grossed, get this, 368.9 million. Huge success.
Well, and I was always surprised that, once again, being unfamiliar with a TV show that ran for a while, that I was really surprised that they didn't, based on the financial success, didn't revisit, Dr. Richard Kimball and go, hey, we made a boatload of money on this, let's mine that again.
They did do a sequel.
Harrison Ford?
Nope, but it was U.S. Marshals. Yeah. It was based on the secondary characters. Yeah.
I thought U.S. Marshals. But I think without the dynamic of the principles, and I did once again, you're so much more knowledgeable about cinema than I am. But one of the members of Tommy Lee Jones' Marshall crew was from The Matrix. Now, where he sort of turncoat, where he was eating a steak, and he was like, "Yeah, man."
Tommy Lee Jones is in U.S. Marshals, but no Harrison Ford. Just that, right? I'm just clarifying.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about a guy that was on Tommy Lee Jones's squad, and he was in The Matrix, and he was the dude that sort of made the deal. Where he's sitting there, and he's eating dinner, and he's having a steak, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I know this steak is not real. That's just my brain telling me, whatever. But when you plug me back in, when I give you the coordinates, on what was it, Nemo or whatever, where he's like, I want to be rich. I want to be somebody important. But that same actor was on Tommy Lee Jones's squad in U.S. Marshals.
Joe Pantoliano. He was the actor, and then you had Wesley Snipes in the cast, Robert Downey Jr. in the cast, and Jerry Goldsmith did the music. Hey, let me just say, it had a budget of $45 million. It made $102.4 million, so it too was a success for Warner Brothers. Released March 6th, 1998.
I remember the Robert Downey Jr. was in that. That's a good factoid.
Yeah.
That's probably when his career was struggling, when he was struggling with personal issues. So he probably had a smaller part.
It was 10 years before Iron Man, the first Iron Man in 2008.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, I went to the site. I heard Al. Is Al in studio, or is he just listening?
No. What we're doing is these are for YouTube. These are our radio shows that we didn't do on video. So I wanted to put them on YouTube. So how I'm doing that is I'm playing the audio of our live radio show from a year ago with a live wraparound. And if someone wants to call in between, I'll take the call like I did for you, if they're on topic. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to do a little 3-hour show, and we're doing it about The Fugitive and my favorite. Well, I love The Fugitive equally, but I love The InVaDeRs as well. And InVaDeRs is one of my favorite sci-fi dramas. It's more like a mobster show, but I'm going to talk about that later. So this was a show Al and I did a while back.
Okay.
The fourth Podblast.
The fourth blast. I know very little about the InVaDeRs show, and the Fugitive show. So I will go back and I will tune in, and if something resonates, I'll call back in, man.
Oh, that'd be great. You're welcome to call.
You're killing it. I love your show.
Thank you, Danny. I appreciate it. Thanks for being a friend of the show, and give my regards to your wife who coined the phrase "podience" for our listeners and viewers. Love it. The podience is listening.
That's right, man.
Okay.
All right, brother.
Take it easy.
Have a
Bye.
good show.
Thanks. So I will continue on with our regularly scheduled program. And I'm sorry it was interrupted. Any of you that were into that story about the Fugitive and Lieutenant Gerard. So let's continue. Morse, he would this is going to be from 1992. There were home video releases of select episodes of The Fugitive. There were only a few volumes on VHS tape, and there'd be 2 episodes per VHS. And Barry recorded intros. So let's listen to some. We're going to listen to quite a bit here, but this is fascinating stuff.
Hello, my name's Barry Morse. And once upon a time, I was Lieutenant Gerard of The Fugitive. Gives you all a bit of a shock, doesn't it? Because I don't look very much like this hard-faced, relentless character that I used to play. That's partly because a good few years have gone by. And what is it, almost 30 years ago that we started on this series. And, of course, partly because I don't sound like that Philip Gerard with his, I hope, thoroughly convincing American accent. There's a reason for that, too. I'm not an American. I'm, in fact, well, I'll tell you. I was born in London, England. And so I was British by the accident of birth. But then some years later, I had the good sense and the good luck to marry a girl from a partly Canadian family. And so some 40-odd years ago, we came to Canada, and I became a Canadian by the exercise of choice. Now, this series of videos, which is being released for your enjoyment at home, introduce me along as giving you the outline of each episode. I hope to be giving you a little bit of trivia gossip on the way about myself and about those who worked with us on that famous, wonderful series, which I still remember with great joy and affection. The Fugitive, as you know, I'm sure, was produced by Quinn Martin and was based from an original outline by Roy Huggins. And what many people don't know is that it was loosely derived from the great French classic novel by Victor Hugo called Les Misérables, which, of course, in more recent times has become a very famous musical. Even the names of the characters, or at least my character, Lieutenant Gerard, is not unlike the relentless police detective in Les Misérables, whose name is Javert. Anyway, this whole series had its beginnings in 1963. And I see that this first episode on this first volume was aired, in fact, on Christmas Eve of 1963. And it's called The Girl from Little Egypt. Now, the girl from Little Egypt is a distraught young stewardess who just accidentally happens to run over or run down Kimball with her car. And feeling guilty, she takes Kimball home and cares for him as he becomes delirious and relives some of his past. Then in flashbacks, we learn about the night that Kimball's wife was murdered, his seeing the one-armed man, leaving the scene of the crime, and then Kimball's trial, which included Gerard's prosecution testimony, and then the fatal train wreck, which allowed Kimball to escape death row and begin his long quest to clear his name. In other words, it sets up more or less the basic structure of the whole Fugitive series. So here now is The Girl from Little Egypt.
Well, you know, he's British and not Canadian.
Yeah, he met Sydney doing summer stock in Canada. That threw me. So slap on my wrist. Good
That's
call.
okay. That's all
now,
right.
if you want to watch The Girl from Little Egypt, CBS Paramount has released The Fugitive in season sets and in a box set. And they're really inexpensive on Amazon.com. I suggest you buy them. Great entertainment, incredible guest stars, up-and-coming actors like Tom Skerritt. He was in an episode in season 2 called The Nicest Fella You Ever Want to Meet. And Pat Hingle played this really mean, horny sheriff. He's crooked as all hell. He runs down Tom Skerritt, who is working. He's a prisoner, and he's working on a farm, like in a work farm situation. And he just runs him down in cold blood. In fact, this episode's what got me hooked on The Fugitive. When I saw that scene, excuse me, I couldn't believe how violent it was and how dramatic it was.
I think Tom Skerritt was in that movie Aliens, wasn't he?
He was, of course, and Top Gun. There's going to be a new Top Gun out. I think, is he deceased, Tom Skerritt?
That I don't know. I wouldn't think so. We can check that later.
Yeah, but it's worth an investment. It's not even a lot better than a lot of the drivel you see these days. The music.
No,
the
I mean,
acting,
you know, the
writing,
shows back
directing.
then were much better than shows today.
And my favorite ones, of course, were the ones that had the one-armed man.
You know, it's funny. I like the black and white shows.
Yeah, they had. It was almost like
It
film
had that
noir.
look, you know. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now I want to play a clip of an episode from season 3 that Richard Donner directed, who went on to direct big screen blockbuster movies like The Omen and Superman, the movie, and the Lethal Weapon movies, as well as others like Conspiracy Theory with his buddy Mel Gibson. But before that, he directed Wife Killer. Here's a clip.
Janssen, can you hear me? I'm doing everything I can to save you. And I'm going to keep on trying, but you have to tell me the truth, and you have to tell me now. Did you kill her? Did you kill my wife?
The Fugitive. A QM production. Starring David Janssen as Dr. Richard Kimball, an innocent victim of blind justice, falsely convicted for the murder of his wife. Reprieved by fate when a train wreck freed him en route to the death house. Freed him to hide in lonely desperation, to change his identity, to toil at many jobs. Freed him to search for a one-armed man he saw leave the scene of the crime. Freed him to run before the relentless pursuit of the police lieutenant obsessed with his capture.
The guest stars in tonight's story, Janice Rule, Kevin McCarthy, also starring Barry Morse as Lieutenant Philip Gerard. Tonight's episode, Wife Killer.
Great episode, and it's out on home video. There's a bit of a controversy about the original DVD release from 2007, 8, 9, and 10 by CBS Paramount. They did terrible music replacement, and the fans went bananas, and they complained to CBS Paramount, and CBS Paramount actually replaced the discs on their own dime. They had replacement music.
I didn't know that.
So the latest set, you have to be careful and get the box set of all 4 seasons of The Fugitive, and you'll hear primarily with all the music intact. I think there's still 5%.
But the opening's still the same. The same
opening,
music.
All of season 1, I'll give you a little tip. Season 1 is all original. All the music's intact. It's when they got around to releasing season 2 that the music. Season 4 was in color.
Oh, okay,
season 2 still black and white, and 3's in black and white. And in the original series, Pete Rugolo, I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, scored the music for season 1, and then they reused it in season 2. But they also started using cues from the Twilight Zone, and in season 4, the first color season, they used music from The Outer Limits, which had been canceled at that time 2 years ago. So it was part of the library. They had
last too long. I like The Outer Limits.
Yeah, it lasted a full season and a half. Season 2, it was cut short, canceled in January 65.
Why do you think it was cut short?
We'll talk about that in the Outer Limits podcast, but I do
Just
know why.
too bizarre?
No, not too bizarre. Network interference. And one of the great Joseph Stefano was one of the producers of the Outer Limits, and he left the show, and they brought in Ben Brady to produce the show, and he just wasn't as good. And they lost Dominique Frontier, the music man, who scored the incredible music for The Outer Limits and The InVaDeRs. Almost a segue into the second half of this podcast. We'll get to it later. But
we'll talk about The Outer Limits.
Music replacement is a constant problem in home video releases. I mean, my goodness, when Bosom Buddies came out, the sitcom, they used on air the song My Life by Billy Joel. Not even sung by Billy Joel. It was sung by other artists. And on home video, they just used like the end title theme instead of that. And then when Happy Days came out originally, they couldn't use Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley and the Comets. So they just left it out of the DVD. WKRP in Cincinnati had the worst luck with music issues because it's set in a radio station.
Well, we'll do a podcast on music.
Yeah.
Movies.
Now, getting back to The Fugitive, here's some facts about David Janssen. He was married twice. He was married to Ellie Graham from 1958 to 1968. And then he was married to, not Denny Crane from Boston Legal, but Danny Crane, DANICRAYNE, from 75 until his death in 1980. he's been gone since 1980. David Janssen died of a massive heart attack. He was a huge chain smoker, and that may have contributed to his untimely death. He was 49 years old when he passed away. And he didn't do many, but we do have a clip of David Janssen on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson from 1976, and this was a hell of an episode of the guest stars that were on. It wasn't just David Janssen, but Olivia Newton-John was on there and Old Blue Eyes. So let's listen to some of this. Dave Janssen mentions Old Blue Eyes.
Action suspense drama called 2 Minute Warning. Would you welcome David Janssen? Good to see you.
Thank you. I wouldn't give this spot to a leopard.
Milton Berle, 1934. Who got it from Henny Youngman in 1920?
Well, in conclusion.
How you feeling?
I'm all right. I just got back from Tokyo, Japan.
That's a good place for it.
Thank you.
That's about a 14-hour hop, isn't it?
Yeah, if you take a plane.
Did you? This is the way it's going to be, huh, now, David? I'll ring the boom thing. Oh, you
David's rolling.
Did you take the polar flight?
No,
No,
they have a direct
or
flight.
don't you take the polar flight to Tokyo?
No, they have a direct
probably
flight
why you didn't
now
take it.
from...
I've never been there. You see, you take the polar flight sometimes to Europe.
Yes.
But I guess you don't take it to
Well,
Tokyo.
that's a long way.
Tokyo, Japan.
Yes. No, but they have direct flights now. At night, you can't fly directly from here to Tokyo. You have to stop off in Honolulu. Honolulu. Excuse me.
What were you doing in Tokyo?
I was there making a film for, a commercial film for commercial venture.
Oh.
Well, that follows.
That follows.
It's very difficult to be on the show with two great wits.
I'm not even going to ask. Because I don't want to be left out of this, so I'm not going to be a dummy and jump in and say who.
But anyway, I'm back, and here I am, and I'm just going to, try to tell you to watch the picture, and then I'm going to listen to Don and Olivia Newton.
Oh, yeah, she's a great singer.
Fearless Frank was on.
Have you ever worked with Frank in a picture at all?
No. I followed him around a lot and asked for his autograph, but I really think he's the chairman. Donald said it.
Yeah.
The best. Yeah. Well,
David remarked, which was so interesting, that 3 out of 4 television shows, that's a great record.
4 out of 4.
No, he had one stiff, right?
Yeah, but it clears me with customs.
But 3 out of 4 is remarkable to be.
Well, you have the record for stiffs, don't you?
Oh, yeah. So
they're rerunning your shows in Zambezi tonight. To calm the natives.
Yeah, sure. In front of Frank, you didn't come on like this.
Frank knows where I live. That's why I
me up. That's all. You're gonna get a phone call in the morning. Don't start your car.
I like that show. That was a good show.
Do you speak any Japanese at all?
Hi.
Oh, outside of hi?
Hi means yes.
Oh, does it?
Hi.
I didn't know that. It's a very difficult language.
You were a lieutenant in the war, right?
Hi. Oh,
Were
yeah.
you in the service?
Yeah, corporal.
Ours?
Yeah.
I was in. You were corporal in the army, and you were. He was an ensign in the Navy.
That's right.
And you
That's
were. Tell him, what were you?
But don't be embarrassed. You always bring this up. I was a colonel in the Marine Corps. All right.
A colonel in the Marine Corps. I didn't know that.
So when he was in Japan,
I was in.
What was the feeling that you got in Japan?
Very Japanese.
You have any more brilliant questions like that?
Well, you're not exactly jumping in and helping.
What's the feeling like in Japan?
No, you're taking a nap on the couch. You're just leaning forward saying, Frank left.
I would imagine the Japanese, because of their culture, are not the kind like Americans who run up. You mentioned autographs and say, "Give me your autograph."
They
Because
are in
that's
different,
too personal, isn't it?
well, in different parts of Tokyo, different parts of Japan. In Tokyo, they are very vocal. They're very outgoing. I think that that's because, Tokyo is really the center of Japanese culture. Osaka, the people are much less vocal. They appreciate you and watch you, and occasionally they will approach you. But in Tokyo, it's much like being in New York or California. If somebody appreciates you, they yell and holler and,
I understand
pull
that
your hair and things like that.
they speak English is predominant in.
No, it's not. Why would it be? Why would English be predominant in Japan?
I don't really care. I don't care if they speak Mau Mau. I don't care.
The Japanese,
as long as my kid gets a lot of toys.
Japanese is the predominant language in Japan.
Who cares? What do I care?
You see a very.
What do I care? I don't plan to go back there again.
No,
one trip was enough. I don't need.
When did you go?
During the war. And there was one Japanese guy in a tree going, "Want to celebrate Hanukkah?"
Where did that happen?
Where did that happen? 1943, August, on the beach of Malibu.
I just wanted to see if you had a place there. You always bring that guy up. I want to know where that happened.
Do your commercial, you
Okay.
pain in the-
We have a message from Janssen. Make you a fine product.
I love Don Rickles, man.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah.
I loved him when he was on Carson.
He was the greatest. Now, that originally aired on November 12th, 1976, just about 3.5 years before David Janssen passed away. Big episode. Those were 90 minutes back in the 70s and 60s. So you had Frank Sinatra on. You heard David Janssen alluding towards that, and Olivia Newton-John. Big, packed episode. So,
well, they don't have, late night talk shows today are really just terrible. There's nobody I like. The only person I really kind of like today is Conan O'Brien.
yeah, he's good.
I liked him, and he should have gotten the job at NBC.
He's funny as
He
heck.
was
He
funny.
replaced David Letterman, of course, in '93 when Letterman went to CBS from NBC because
And-
he was upset that he wasn't chosen to replace Johnny Carson.
And he should have been.
Jay
I
Leno
like
got it,
Jay
of course.
Leno, but
I do
I
too.
still. But anyway, I digress.
Now, what I want to talk about next are some of the great guest stars that were in The Fugitive. I've mentioned some of them, like Tom Skerritt, but Carol O'Connor did some great first season episodes.
He's a good actor. He could play a really just about anybody. He's funny, but he could play a really kind of a
son of a bitch.
Yeah,
Son of a
somebody
big ass.
really is difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, he went on to play Archie Bunker. For those that don't know, Carol is actually a man. Carol O'Connor, the great Archie Bunker. You had Martin Alsom. He's okay. He was in Psycho, the movie Psycho, but there are some really, really big names. Angie Dickinson, Sex Pot. She was in season 2 episode called Brass Ring. And who else is in that is a wonderful actor who's been in the business for many, many, many years.
And who is that?
Robert Duvall.
Great actor. Great
yeah.
actor.
Tender Mercies, I believe, is a multi-Oscar winner. William Shatner was in an episode, Stranger in the Mirror, from season 3, and he played someone that had some severe mental problems. He was out to kill cops, and he didn't know he was doing it. He had like some sort of mental block, and it was because in the story, his dad killed his mom, and then he went to prison, and the cops killed his dad. So he had some deep psychological need to waste police, which is a terrible thing. And really dramatic episode. Like he's hitting them over the head with a rock, and he would take the badge and put it in this humidor. Every time he killed a cop, he put the cop's badge in this humidor, and it was really, really weird, like a little cigar box. But he was good in that one, and it was cool to see Dr. Richard Kimball fight Captain Kirk. Tuesday Weld was in some episodes. The lovely Tuesday Weld. She was in one episode, Dark Corner, from season 2, where she played a really deranged blind woman who was in love with Dr. Richard Kimball, or his alias.
So we can safely say a lot of big actors.
Charles Bronson. Yeah, Charles Bronson. I know I'm forgetting some, but
No, we can't
Oh.
remember everybody, but
Anne Francis, I mean, Lee Grant, Ron Howard, little Ronnie Howard in a season 2 episode called Cry Uncle. Diane Ladd, Bruce Dern, he was a regular guest star. See, Quinn Martin would use the same talent again and again. If you did a good job for Quinn Martin, he would be loyal to you and he would cast you again and again and again. Donald Pleasance, better known as Detective Loomis in the Halloween horror movies years later.
He's not with us anymore either.
I know. Jessica Walter, who went on to do Arrested Development. She was a young dish in a season 3 episode. Anyway, it goes on and on. Lana Wood, Lee Merriweather, Hope Lang. But I want to talk about the final episode, and then we're going to segue into the InVaDeRs, the second half of this podcast, which is a science fiction show. The final episode almost didn't happen. And one of the producers who worked with our man Quinn Martin in many projects, Leonard Goldberg, and he also worked with Aaron Spelling, on Charlie's Angels Down the Road. He persuaded ABC to do a final episode, and the network was against it. They said, wait, the show's done. David Janssen doesn't want to do it anymore. Why would you do a last episode? So I want to play an interview with Leonard Goldberg talking about why they did a final Fugitive. Roll it, Al.
The Fugitive was a gigantic hit series for ABC, and had been on the air for many years as a huge hit with David Janssen. And the 66-67 season was its last year. I think we've been on the air for 5 years. And the series was going to end in May and go off the air. And I went to the president of the network and I said to him, we can't just end the series with another episode. People have been watching this series for 5 years, chasing the one-armed man. We have to resolve the series. And he and the other senior members of management looked at me like I was crazy. They said, what are you talking about? It's over. I said, yeah, but it's not over. They've invested in this for 5 years. We've got to come to a conclusion. No, we don't. You mean the people actually? I said, yeah, they watch and they care. They actually believe, even though they know it's fiction, but once passing over fiction, they're into that character and his story. No. What do you want to do? I said, we want to make one more episode and perhaps run it just before the start of the new season that will conclude The Fugitive. Oh, no, we don't want to conclude. It's not important. I said, yes, it is. Nobody cares. Yes, they do. I went to a few advertisers and got them to put up the extra money for one more original episode. I think it was Bristol Myers. And begrudgingly, they said, well, as long as you got it paid for, we'll let you put it on the air. It went on the air in August and got a 46 rating and a 72 share. That's what it got. I don't think anybody gets a 46 share anymore, let alone a 46 rating. 46% of all the television homes tuned in to that 1 hour. And what it illustrated to me was the very people who made television, who controlled television, saw the numbers and they knew that, 20 million people were watching, but they were just watching. They were just sitting there while their eyeballs went in and out, but they didn't care. And I thought, what a sad commentary on our business that the people in charge don't believe the power of their own medium. And that always stayed with me, and that you realize the people who tune in actually do care about these characters and they want to see what happens at the end. It was, again, an early but powerful lesson to me. Because in the middle of the summer, to get a 72 share, we didn't advertise it particularly heavily. We just announced it was on the air.
So clearly a strong sense of investment from the loyal viewers.
Absolutely. But yet they thought that for 5 years they just watched because their sets happened to be tuned to Channel 7 that night. Anything would have sufficed.
What a great interview.
How about that? I'm just
That
going to
was
leave
great.
that right there. He said it all.
He did.
He said it all. And speaking of that final episode that aired on August 29th, 1967, here is the final epilogue to The Fugitive.
Dr. Kimball, how do you feel now that you're a free man?
How do you think you feel?
What are your immediate plans, Doctor?
Well, I'd see some of my family and go back to work again.
Well, what's the first thing you plan to do?
Get out of here.
Jake says he'll meet us back home later.
Okay.
Hey,
Hey. Tuesday, September 5th. The day the running stopped.
And that's how it ended. I have a 16 millimeter film print with the original commercials from that air date. Now, August 29th, 1967 was the date the final episode aired. What you heard there in the date of September 5th, I can explain.
Do that.
That audio is from a videotape release of the final episode that Good Times Home Video released back in 1988. And they used a Canadian print. It aired in Canada a week after it aired in America. So the actual, like on my film print with the original ads, it definitely says August 29th, the day the running stopped. And what's going on in that scene is Lieutenant Gerard and Dr. Richard Kimball embrace and have a moment of reconciliation.
What in Canada? Why didn't they have it the same? I don't quite understand why they didn't do it.
I need to research that. I can't believe it with so many spoilers that would go down in that week. It aired in Canada on September 5th, and somebody at Good Times Home Video messed up and used the wrong print for that home video release.
See, if we'd have had social media back then, they'd have found out.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's
but
right.
we didn't have it back then.
I just love the show. I hope you guys discover it. Anyone out there who's listening has never seen the old Fugitive show, check it out. It's highly entertaining, hour-long program. So the woman that Kimball wound up with, who said, hey, in that clip, she was played by Diane Baker. And Diane Baker
was a big movie star.
She was in Straight Jacket with Joan Crawford.
Yeah, well, she made a lot of movies.
Lee Majors. He got beheaded right before the opening titles of Straight Jacket. But she also played, I don't want to go off the rails here, but she played a mermaid in Route 66 in a great episode. I think Ron Howard was inspired when he did Splash by this episode of Diane Baker playing a mermaid. It's a lovely episode of Route 66. But she's also in the InVaDeRs pilot, which we'll get into in the second half of this podcast. But as we wrap up The Fugitive, and there's still so much more we could talk about, but in the interest of time constraint, I will say that David Janssen's real name is actually David Harold Meyer, Meyer. And David Janssen is a stage name.
Like a lot of, TV stars.
Well, you got to have a better name, something catchy. David Janssen just sounds kind of hip and strong. But David, did I mention this? He was born March 27th, 1931, and he died February 13th, 1980. So long ago. But, he
didn't live very long.
I know. He was a heavy smoker. We talked about that.
Yeah.
But thanks to film and video,
he'll live on.
He lives on forever, like on the Johnny Carson videotape we played and other things. So, and then Quinn Martin, the great Quinn Martin, producer of all those wonderful shows, some that I have mentioned and some others, like Dan August. Earlier today, before we rolled in this podcast, we watched on 16 millimeter film what Al thought was the pilot to Dan August, which was a Burt Reynolds show. He was the star. It was a detective show, a crime show. And it lasted only one season in 1970 to 71. But there was a movie movie of the week that was the pilot of that show, called The House on Green Apple Road. But anyway, we were watching the film, and I realized, wait a minute, this is 2 episodes of Dan August. This isn't the pilot. And I pulled out my trusty phone, went to IMDb, and
You can find out everything.
it's
on your
episode
phone.
9 and 14, was it, Al?
Yes,
9 and 14. And it was edited together as a movie, I guess, for syndication, as they did with a lot of shows that lasted one
It's a
season.
movie of the week on ABC.
Well, originally
Yeah.
the pilot, like I
Yeah.
just said, but I'm saying shows that lasted 1 year, like Planet of the Apes, the TV show, only lasted 14 episodes.
Well, we're
And they
digressing
edited-
here.
And the time tunnel, they would edit 2 episodes to be a quote unquote movie. Anyway, yes, we do digress. What else did I want to say about Quinn Martin? His real name is Irwin Martin Cohn, Cohn. Cohn. He was an awesome producer, born in New York City, and he died back in 1987, unfortunately, September 5th, 1987.
In the
San
early
Francisco.
episodes of
San
the
Francisco.
TV shows, they called it a QM production, and
Yes.
then in the later episodes, it was a Quinn Martin production.
My name is David Benton. Al Dexter. Bob Davies. Did you do me a favor?
This is WTZA, Decatur, Atlanta.
I'm only going to say this once. It's about the Pasco case. Get the wrong man. A murderer? No, I'm not.
A murderer, tried and convicted.
You found the boy. That doesn't mean you found the one that attacked your wife. Sometimes the law goes wrong. If I were drowning, wouldn't you jump in for me? I would tell myself my brother thinks I'm guilty.
I swear to faithfully fulfill all duties of temporary aid of the Deputy Sheriff of this county. Say, I swear.
I swear.
You're now an officer of the law.
What are you doing in Chicago?
There's just a chance that the man who killed my wife is here.
Oh, Gerard's here. Keep him here. Where are you, girl?
They're here. The InVaDeRs, January 10th, 1967. That was the premiere of The InVaDeRs. And how about that music? I love that note of dread. That. Now,
Actually, The
before that-
InVaDeRs is a great show. I'm surprised it didn't last as long.
No, but
Yeah.
thankfully, it's back on the air after many, many years. MeTV, National Digital Network, is airing The InVaDeRs as part of their sci-fi Saturday night lineup at midnight Eastern time, and I think midnight out west, maybe 11 o'clock Central, but it airs weekly, and they're started the second season right around
I wish they
Labor
would
Day.
put it on earlier, though.
Yeah, I kind of
mean,
dig
you know.
midnight. I like midnight on Saturday. I think that's cool. I think that
A lot of
fits
people don't
the
stay
show.
up. I don't stay up past midnight. It's rare.
Well, I applaud MeTV for bringing it back.
Yeah, I do
Previous-
too. Don't get me wrong.
All right, now The InVaDeRs was part of the original lineup of the Sci-Fi Channel when it launched in 1992, and it ran to I think 93, and then it came back in 2008 just for a couple episodes on Sci-Fi, and that's been it. So I applaud MeTV for bringing it back, and they have a hashtag thing. I watch it live with the other sci-fi freaks out there like myself, and then they have a hashtag MeTV InVaDeRs. So we tweet each other fun facts about the show and everything. So
Now, MeTV does a great job on promoting their product.
they sure do. And
they have excellent promos.
we've got some cool surprises and some audio I think you'll like pertaining to the show and Quinn Martin, including we are going to debut some music, a rock version of the InVaDeRs theme that
I'm not
someone
so
I
sure
know in
about that.
Seattle.
Am I going to like that?
Oh, you're going to love it because
Oh,
my friend, Mr. Gilman, we'll call him, he's out in Washington State. And back in 2002, he did a rock version of the InVaDeRs theme, and he sampled clips from the show with Dominique Frontier's music, which
I
is
love
a
his
segue.
music.
Here's a segue into Dominique Frontier and who he is. This guy scored a lot of films back in the 60s as well as TV shows. He worked on 12 O'Clock High,
My favorite.
the World War II drama, and Outer Limits. He left the Outer Limits to do 12 O'Clock High for Quinn Martin.
But you know, I like the Outer Limits music, but it was just too weird. It didn't have that orchestra sound like 12 O'Clock High. Of course, it's a different show. I understand. It was just kind of a
Yeah,
I didn't
12
think-
O'Clock High had a grandiose musical
right.
score.
I didn't care for the Outer Limits.
It was
theme.
bigger than the TV screen, let's just
Right.
say. Well, Dominique Frontier actually had scored the music that would wound up being on the InVaDeRs as the main title theme that you just heard. What it was on the Outer Limits, Joseph Stefano, the producer, was going to spin off the Outer Limits into a new show called The Unknown. And they conducted and created and produced a pair. This is the original music that would be adapted to the InVaDeRs main theme because it never aired except for the episode of Outer Limits. So, Al, would you please cue up? Son of a bitch. Fucking thing stopped. Son of a bitch. I'm not using YouTube no more for this. Went back to Facebook. Son of a bitch. All right, let's do this. Fucking son of a goddamn bitch.